The Blackhawks season opener has finally arrived. I'll go over everything you need to know against the Utah Hockey Club.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and find me on X at Jack Bushman2. Be sure to also go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey. That way, you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And last but certainly not least, got to let you all know that today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. If you're not already a member, go and visit FanDuel.com right now. And when you put $5 down, you'll get awarded $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed with America's #1 sportsbook. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Game day has finally arrived, Blackhawks fans. The regular season finally begins here this evening as the Blackhawks kick things off, of course, out in Utah as they'll be playing the Utah Hockey Club, the first game in their franchise history, first game ever held in Salt Lake City. Should be a ruckus atmosphere out there when things get underway. But to open up things on today's episode, as I will be doing ahead of every Blackhawks game throughout the regular season, I'll be going over their projected lineup, forward lines, and defensive pairings, as well as my 3 keys to victory and everything else you need to know before the puck drops at 9 p.m. Central Time. And again, as a reminder, tonight's game is going to be broadcasted on TNT. It's not going to be networked in Chicago here on CHSN. That debut is going to come on Friday when the Blackhawks play the Winnipeg Jets. And we still don't know if there are any more distribution deals coming for CHSN. It's just DirecTV as of right now, which of course has caused a lot of stress among us Blackhawks fans, even me as a YouTube TV holder. And to hear from Scott Powers that it feels like an outside chance that YouTube TV is going to get a deal done with CHSN, I'm absolutely concerned. I do expect a deal with Comcast fully to be done by Friday's game, but everything else seems like it's kind of up in the air right now. Fortunately, though, we do not have to deal with that here for the Blackhawks season opener, going to be nationally broadcasted on TNT, again, with a 9 p.m. Central Time puck drop. As far as what we can expect to see out of the Blackhawks lineup, they did hold one final practice at Fifth Third Arena in Chicago before departing to Salt Lake City. I mentioned late in segment 1 on yesterday's episode that Andreas Athanasiou and Lukas Reichel appear to be the 2 forwards on the outside looking in at this point in time. I'm recording this episode before the Blackhawks have their morning skate out in Utah. However, I would be really surprised if they deviated from what they showed us at practice yesterday, meaning I expect Lukas Reichel and Andreas Athanasiou, as unfortunate as it is, to both be healthy scratches for the Blackhawks here tonight when the regular season gets underway. And that was certainly not a statement I anticipated myself saying when the preseason and when training camp opened up, but neither of them really took advantage of their opportunities in the preseason. For Reichel, it's absolutely more disappointing considering he's someone who we're hoping is going to be a piece of the puzzle coming off of a rather disappointing year last year. Was hoping he was going to get off to a good start and kind of get some momentum in his favor, but that just didn't happen in the preseason, and now seems like he's going to be a healthy scratch in game number 1 for the Blackhawks, which absolutely is not ideal. And in the top 6, that now leaves for the Blackhawks first with their top line. We know Connor Bedard is going to be centering it, but he's actually going to be playing with a trio that we haven't seen him roll with throughout the preseason or training camp. As Ilya Mikheyev, believe it or not, has actually been promoted to the top line. Luke Richardson said he did that because he just wants to instill a little bit more speed in the forward group. I can't personally say I think that's a spot where Mikheyev is going to fit in long term, but at the same point in time, the forward combinations that Richardson rolled with in the preseason, none of them were looking really sharp. So not surprised that he's still hitting the blender here a little bit, but a huge opportunity for Mikheyev tonight, playing alongside Connor Bedard, and Teuvo Teravainen is on the right wing on that top line, even though he didn't have the best conclusion to his preseason like we wanted to see. And I mentioned on the show, Richardson said there was an opportunity for him if he had a good showing to go and punch his ticket on that top line. He didn't exactly have the performance we wanted to see, but still gets that opportunity along with Bedard and Mikheyev. Second line for the Blackhawks, Taylor Hall at left wing, no surprise there. Tyler Bertuzzi actually bumped down to the right wing spot on the second line. And then Philip Kurashev, as of now, is centering that trio, even though Blackhawks didn't really utilize him all that much at center last year. The most center that he played was just taking faceoffs for Connor Bedard. And quite honestly, I thought that path had kind of came and went for Philip Kurashev, but there is a hole in the Blackhawks forward group in terms of that second line center spot. Seems like Philip Kurashev is getting the first go at it here to kick off the regular season. Third line for the Blackhawks is that shutdown line, Nick Foligno, Jason Dickinson, and Joey Anderson with a really sharp finish to his preseason to earn a spot in the opening night lineup. And then rounding things out, Pat Maroon, Ryan Donato, who was one of the best Blackhawks in the preseason, absolutely deserves to be in the lineup. They'll both be skating on the Hawks' fourth line with Craig Smith. And as I mentioned, that leaves Lucas Reichel and Andreas Athanasiou as the two odd men out. On the back end for the Blackhawks, I referenced yesterday, Isaac Phillips was placed on waivers. Fortunately for us Blackhawks fans, he did wind up clearing, and I said if he did clear, the plan was for him to stick around at the NHL level until probably Wyatt Kaiser is ready to go, and Richardson said he's going to take a couple of days to ramp up, and we can expect him to get in the lineup sometime at the end of this season opening road trip, or possibly when the Blackhawks return home to play their home opener at the UC against the San Jose Sharks. Whenever Kaiser does return, it seems that Phillips is going to be the one going to Rockford instead of Nolan Allen. We'll see how that winds up shaking up. But Alec Martinez, Seth Jones serving as the top pairing tonight. Richardson said throughout camp that's the top pairing he wanted to roll with. That bumps Alex Vlasic down to the second pairing with TJ Brody, where he's going to be playing his offside. And that leaves Nolan Allen, who's going to be making his NHL debut here tonight, first round pick for the Blackhawks in 2021, skating on the third defensive pairing alongside alternate captain Connor Murphy. In net for the Blackhawks, Peter Mrazek absolutely going to get the nod as Laurent Brossoit still isn't ready to return from injury. That could cause Arvid Soderblom to start one of the two games that the Blackhawks have in this weekend back-to-back, Friday in Winnipeg, Saturday in Edmonton. You would probably think Soderblom would get the front half of that back-to-back if Brossoit isn't ready, but Mrazek absolutely going here tonight. Well-deserved to be the season opening starter for the Blackhawks, considering the year that he had last year. As far as what we can expect for the Utah lineup in their first game in franchise history, based on what we saw yesterday at their final practice before this game, Clayton Keller, Barrett Hayton, and Blackhawks legend Nick Schmaltz served as the top line. McBain, Logan Cooley, and Dylan Gunther skated as the second line. Matthias Michelli, Josh Doan, and Lawson Krause skated as the third line. And then Michael Carconi, Kevin Stenlund, and Liam O'Brien, the spicy tuna, on the fourth line to round things out. In their forward group on the back end, Mikhail Sergachev, the big offseason addition from the Tampa Bay Lightning, making his debut along with Sean Durzi. They got Cole and Kuyachuk. I don't know who that is, to be quite honest, on their second pairing. And then Michael Kesselring and Robert Bortuzzo rounding things out on the back end. So, as I mentioned a couple of days ago, considering the Blackhawks have opened up the season against the Colorado Avalanche the last few years, certainly the most winnable season opener they've had in quite a while. As far as my three keys to victory in order for the Blackhawks to come away with 2 points here this evening, number one is to start fast and to try to quiet the home crowd as much as possible early on. First game in franchise history. I think it's going to be a buzzing fan base, considering what we've seen from these Utah fans whenever the Jazz are really good. I think they're going to be showing up in full force tonight. They're going to be really excited for their new team. The fans are going to be into it right from the get-go. And if the Blackhawks can try to quiet them, try to take them out of it as much as possible, I really think that would do them a huge favor, just to kind of settle that home crowd and not have Utah have all the momentum on their side from kind of that extra man advantage that gets provided with home ice. My second key to victory for the Blackhawks is to play with speed in transition. I really think it was one of the few strengths of this team last year. I think it's going to be one of the strengths of this team this year, but we just didn't see it enough from the Blackhawks in the preseason, and speed is why I mentioned Luke Richardson bumped Ilya Mikheyev up on that top line with Connor Bedard and Teuvo Teravainen. Play with speed, Ilya, and that goes for everyone in the Blackhawks top six. Those are our best offensive-minded pieces, obviously, and I still think the Blackhawks are going to lack that elite goal scoring this year other than what they're going to get from Connor Bedard. So if they can play with speed in transition, try to get some odd man breaks, try to get some scoring chances off the rush, I really think that's going to work in their benefit. And then last but certainly not least, my final key to victory is for the Blackhawks to win the top six battle. I think if our top six outscores Arizona's top six, I think the Blackhawks are going to win this game. I feel like that's where the offense is going to come from Arizona. And if our top six can outscore them, if, Bedard, Kurashev, Hall, Bertuzzi, Teravainen, and Mikheyev, if they can outscore the Keller, Hayton, Schmaltz group along with McBain, Cooley, and Gunther, I think the Blackhawks are going to come away with this win here tonight. So our primary scorers got to provide the primary scoring. I think that's going to give the Blackhawks a huge edge in terms of, I think if we can make their depth guys have to do the heavy lifting, I think we have a good shot of coming away with 2 points. As far as my final prediction for the Blackhawks season opener, I don't think I'd be me if I didn't pick the Blackhawks. So Blackhawks come away with their first season opening win in a couple of years. I have them taking down the Utah Hockey Club, playing spoiler in their own building, coming away with a 4-2 victory here this evening. All right, Blackhawks fans, couldn't be more excited for the season to get underway here. 9 p.m. Central Time, again, as a reminder, on TNT. And I want all of you to drop your Blackhawks first goal scorer of the season predictions down in the comment section below right now. Let me know who you think is going to score the first goal for the Blackhawks in the 2024-2025 regular season. Going to take a quick break here, Blackhawks fans, but when I return, I'm going to give you all 10 bold predictions that I have for the Blackhawks in the 2024-2025 campaign. But first, I got to talk to you all real quick about the fine folks over at FanDuel. To all my NFL fans out there, you can now start the season with a big return over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you also happen to place your bets. And to all of my Blackhawks fans out there and my NHL fans, FanDuel has now dropped the over-under lines for every team's point totals for this upcoming season. The Blackhawks, FanDuel has them listed at 74.5, which, as I've mentioned a couple of times here, I think is a really savvy number. They also have Connor Bedard's season goal total over-under at 34.5, which, again, I think is a really savvy number. I have predict him to pot 34 goals for the Blackhawks this year, fittingly enough, and that was what I predicted before I even saw that number. But if you got a hunch on the over for Bedard or for the Blackhawks, make sure to go and check out FanDuel.com right now. And if you're not already a member, create an account. And when you put $5 down, you'll get awarded with $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed with America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that's putting $5 down after you create an account will win you $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, just want to say thank you for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. Hope you all kind of get into a habit of making Locked On Blackhawks your first listen, as I will, as I've already mentioned, be having Blackhawks game previews dropping before every game throughout the regular season. Also, be on the lookout for my recap that'll be dropping tomorrow morning as well. And I also got to let you know for your second listen of the day to go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, providing national expertise with a local perspective. And you can easily go and find the link to Locked On NHL down in the description of this video, or simply search on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Segment 2, every year before the regular season gets underway, I make sure to do a Blackhawks bold predictions episode. It's always fun to go back and look at these once the season comes to a close and realize how dumb I was with some of these predictions. But it's always fun to, kind of throw out predictions out there, take a stab at something, see what winds up being right, see what winds up being wrong. It's something that I really enjoy doing year after year, and always have a good laugh at myself for some of the takes that I wind up putting out here. Some of the bold predictions I'm going to be giving are bolder than others, but I want you also to go and drop your Blackhawks bold prediction down in the comment section right now. Let me know what kind of outlandish take you have for the Blackhawks here in this regular season. The first bold prediction, though, that I have for the Blackhawks this year is that they will not finish last in the NHL Central Division. And some of you may have watched my Central Division Roundtable episode that dropped. I think that was the first day of October, actually. So that would have been last Monday, a little over a week ago from now. But when I was sitting down with the Central Division hosts, I thought it was funny how each and every one of them projected their overs in terms of their over-under point totals listed on FanDuel. Everyone said over. That ain't going to happen. It's going to be real funny to see which ones of those teams do not wind up hitting their overs. I think it's going to be the Blues. I think it's going to be Utah Hockey. I think it's going to be Winnipeg. I ultimately, though, think Utah is the team to finish last in this division. I do not trust their defense. I think they have some questionable goaltending. They have better depth up front than they have, but they still have to rely on a lot of young players. Schmaltz hasn't been able to stay healthy. I love Clayton Keller, but he hasn't really had a second guy to kind of work with. So I think Utah is actually going to finish last in this division. Blackhawks will not be dead last in the Central for the first time in quite a while. My second Blackhawks bold prediction, this one not too bold, and for those of you who routinely listen or watch the show, this one isn't going to shock you, but I have the Blackhawks reaching 70 points for the first time since 2019-20. I do think they're going to win at least 30 games this year. I think they can win somewhere between 30 to 35. And 70 points, man, I know it's been a while since we've hit that number, but it really shouldn't be that lofty of an expectation for the Blackhawks, considering the offseason moves that they made. Yes, I am a little concerned based on what I saw in the preseason, but still, there's no denying this team is much more talented than what they had last year. I'm praying to the hockey gods that they stay healthier. They just have much better depth. I do believe the Blackhawks. This is the team to get back to 70 points, and that's really not even that bold of a prediction. But funny enough, I did see Jay Fresh Hockey's standing predictions for the season that he dropped on social media this morning, and he had the Blackhawks at 82 points this year. I have them somewhere between 70 and 78. My next Blackhawks bold prediction, number 3, is that Laurent Brossoit becomes the number 1 goaltender for the Blackhawks. I love Peter Mrazek. I love what he did for us last year. I do have concerns about him repeating the type of year that he had last year, as well as staying healthy as the number 1 goaltender. He's had lingering groin issues. He's getting, up into his late 30s or so. And Laurent Brossoit, even though the sample size hasn't been great, he has been really fantastic in 3 of his last 4 NHL campaigns, albeit as a backup, but I think this is the time for him to finally get the keys and run with it. It'll still be a little bit of a tandem, don't get me wrong, but I think Laurent Brossoit winds up being the number 1 goalie for the Blackhawks when it's all said and done this year. Number 4, Pat Maroon becomes the new unlikely fan favorite here in Chicago. We've seen this happen with multiple guys over the last couple of years, right? Corey Perry, I know that didn't end the way we want it to, obviously, but he was winning the fan base over prior to that incident because of the way he carried himself on the ice. We saw it happen with Max Domi the year prior, right? Like 2 unlikely guys that us Blackhawks fans just grew to hate over the years. But once they become a Chicago Blackhawk, one of those guys that you hate to play against but love to have on your team. I could see the same thing happening with Pat Maroon. Even though he's not going to have the largest role, he's going to be on the 4th line. I don't think he's even going to play every night. But when he's out there, you're going to know it because he's going to make his presence felt. He's got some size, will play a net front presence. He'll play the protector, ain't afraid to mix it up. I love Pat Maroon, and he brings all of that veteran experience. Like, I think Blackhawks fans are going to absolutely love Pat Maroon and are going to be very sad whenever his short Blackhawks tenure comes to an end. My 5th bold prediction for the Blackhawks this year. This one, again, not necessarily the boldest one like my second bold prediction, but I have Alex Vlasic taking over as the legit number 1 defenseman. Seth Jones, might still finish number 1 in ice time, but I don't think there's going to be any doubts from us Blackhawks fans and the Blackhawks organization about who the top defenseman is for this team. It's going to be Alex Vlasic. I was really happy with what I saw from him for the most part in the preseason. And as he continues to just get more physically developed and physically mature, I think that's going to aid his game and his style of play more and more and more, while also clearly working on the puck moving game and the foot speed, right? Those are two things that I really think have helped take his game to the next level. I expect to see that next step out of Alex Vlasic this year to really become the number 1 defenseman for the Blackhawks. My 6th Blackhawks bold prediction is that Ethan Del Mastro earns a call-up and stays. And this one's pretty bold, but I've been high on Ethan Del Mastro for the last couple of years, and he knocked it out of the park last year in his first pro campaign with the Rockford Ice Hogs. And had the Blackhawks not had the depth that, not brought in Martinez and Brody like they did this offseason, I think there was a good shot that Ethan Del Mastro could have been an NHL regular, and love to see him make his NHL debut at the end of last year as a little bit of a reward for how good of a job he did down in Rockford. I know Nolan Allen at this point in time right here, right now, is ahead of Ethan Del Mastro in the pecking order. Long term, though, I got Ethan Del Mastro as the better defenseman. I think he's maybe not as physical, but he's got good size. He's actually the taller of the two defensemen. I think he's the better skater between the two. I think he's the better puck mover between the two. I think he's got the better offensive game. So that's why I've always been higher on Ethan Del Mastro than Nolan Allen. We'll see what winds up transpiring from Allen's first NHL stint and what happens with Ethan Del Mastro down in Rockford. He's going to be playing a sizable role down there, but I'm predicting that once Ethan Del Mastro gets a call up, he's going to stick around for good on the back end for the Blackhawks. Next bold prediction that I have, number 7, is that Andreas Athanasiou doesn't get traded. And maybe when you first hear that, you're thinking, wait, what? That would be such a disservice for the Blackhawks. Athanasiou is probably not going to sign on here after this year. And I agree with that statement. However, I could see the Blackhawks trading Taylor Hall, who's going to be one of the forward assets that, hopefully everything goes right for him this year and the Blackhawks are able to get some type of nice return for him. But Ryan Donato is kind of the other forward involved in this conversation here. On the back end, you got Alec Martinez, right? I really think that if the Blackhawks move on from Taylor Hall, there's another piece that I'm missing, and I apologize for that. But, Craig Smith, Ryan Donato, Pat Maroon, all on the final years of their deals. They could all wind up being traded as well. I feel like Athanasiou is one of those guys who is probably going to get a middle round pick if the Blackhawks do trade him. It does depend on what happens this year, but probably somewhere between a 3rd and a 5th at the stage of his career, if I had to guess. And if the Blackhawks do trade Taylor Hall at the deadline, that's going to open up a spot in the top 6. I really think they want to leave Frank Nazar in Rockford to let him marinate and develop as long as possible. I could see Kyle Davidson just not trading Andreas Athanasiou because, look, all assets are good assets, but the Blackhawks don't really need another 3rd, 4th, or 5th round pick right now. Honestly, with their prospect pool, it's about quality over quantity at this point. And because they don't really need that type of pick, I wouldn't be surprised if they kept Andreas Athanasiou around just because he would be a little bit more of a capable top 6 option to play with Connor Bedard or to play with some guys on the second line after the trade deadline, still leaving some competent offensive pieces for the Blackhawks. So that's why I predict Andreas Athanasiou, even though he doesn't sign an extension with the Blackhawks, he winds up not getting traded. My 8th bold prediction for the Blackhawks this year is that Artem Levshinov doesn't get an NHL call-up until March or April. Kind of like Frank Nazar, as I just mentioned, I really believe the Blackhawks don't want to be rushing Artem Levshinov onto the scene. It's already been a whirlwind of the last couple of years for him, right? Coming over from Belarus, going to the USHL real quick, then jumping into college hockey, not even really having a training camp, and then drafted by the Blackhawks here in Chicago, taking part in, expected to take part in rookie camp. It's been a rather quick last couple of years for Artem Levshinov, and this is just a patient stage of the Blackhawks organization. So I'd be stunned if Artem Levshinov made his NHL debut before March or April for the Blackhawks. And honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if he didn't play a single NHL game throughout the course of this year because there's just absolutely no rush. My 9th bold prediction for the Blackhawks is not one that I'm very happy to say, but I do have an inkling that this could be the case, Blackhawks fans. My 9th bold prediction for this year is that Lukas Reichel doesn't figure it out. And that leaves the Blackhawks in a really weird spot. I don't know what they would do with him. I just worry about Reichel's confidence. I worry about the consistency. Can he still put it together? Yeah, absolutely. We saw Philip Kurashev go and do it last year, and I believe in Lukas Reichel's skills way more than I ever believed in Philip Kurashev's. And Reichel's still only 22 years old. He absolutely can figure it out. It's just hard for me to expect that to happen. And based on just the way that this thing is moving, the direction that it's heading, I do have concerns about Lukas Reichel ever becoming a productive NHL player here in Chicago for the Blackhawks. I hope I'm wrong, but my 9th bold prediction for the Blackhawks is Lukas Reichel doesn't figure it out this year. My 10th and final bold prediction for the Blackhawks. Ryan Green makes his NHL debut at the end of the year once he wraps up his junior year as captain with Boston University. And like we saw from Frank Nazar, my boy Ryan Green is going to score his first NHL goal before the year comes to an end. All right, there are my 10 bold predictions for the Chicago Blackhawks in the 2024-2025 campaign. Reminder, go and drop your bold prediction for the Blackhawks down in the comment section right now. Got one final break to take here, Blackhawks fans, but when I return, I'll dive headfirst into Tyler Bertuzzi's 2023-2024-25 season preview. But first, real quick, I got to talk to you all about Indeed. We're all driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, but match with Indeed. And if you need a hiring platform, then you need Indeed, because Indeed is the best matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. And one of the things that I personally love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so simple and so easy, because you can skip out on the countless job sites that ask you unnecessary information and still don't wind up leading you anywhere. Instead, go and join the more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that currently use Indeed to hire great talent in an instant. And listeners and viewers of this show, you will get a free $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility when you check out Indeed.com/LockedOnNHL. Again, go and visit Indeed.com/LockedOnNHL right now to get a free $75 sponsored job credit that'll help get your jobs more visibility. Need to hire? Then you need Indeed. Segment 3, before I wrap up today's episode, time to get into my next Blackhawks 24-25 season preview. And for those who have missed it, I've already covered Connor Bedard, Taylor Hall, Teuvo Teravainen, Seth Jones, Alex Vlasic, Lukas Reichel. Make sure to go and check out those season preview segments on the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel, and you can easily find every segment time-coded in the description, so you don't have to just wander and scroll through the video and not figure out where the segment is. You can easily click on the time code in the description. And also do still have a couple more coming, with the Blackhawks having an off day on Wednesday, off day on Thursday before they're back-to-back on Friday and Saturday. I will still be having a couple of final season previews coming out the next couple of days. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. But next up, we have 29-year-old forward Tyler Bertuzzi, who, of course, is entering his first season with the Blackhawks. It's his 8th year as a full-time NHLer. Burst onto the scene with the Detroit Red Wings after being a second-round pick there in 2013. Had a nice couple of first years there, 20 goal scorer in 2 of his first 3 full years at the NHL level, and then really put it all together in 2021-2022, posting career highs in goals and assists, 30 goals, 32 assists for 62 points in only 68 games worth of action. Sadly, was never able to get back to that level the season after, and that led to the Red Wings trading him to the Boston Bruins, spent half a year there, and then last year wound up signing a 1-year contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs, used in a middle six role for them and wound up scoring 21 goals, adding in 22 assists for 43 points for a nice little bounce back campaign out of Tyler Bertuzzi. And that led to him inking that 4-year deal at $5.5 million here with the Blackhawks, which, I mean, is not my favorite contract to give out here in the offseason, but jury's still out, obviously. We don't know how this is going to look in a couple of years down the road. I do have my concerns, though, considering what Bertuzzi has been throughout his career, and he's on the verge of turning 30 years old. First question I want to answer here, though, as a hair brushes by my camera, is what role does Tyler Bertuzzi need to fill for the Blackhawks this year? Immediately, you think he's got to be inside the top six one way or another, but I think the ideal spot for him is to be with Connor Bedard, and that's why it's disappointing that he wasn't able to secure a top-line spot because of a lackluster preseason. I think the ideal spot for him would be providing some offense, providing some net front presence along with Connor Bedard, while also being able to protect him out there, playing a little bit rugged, playing with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. And I figure, because of Bedard's skill, and Teuvo Teravainen could potentially be on that top line with those two as well, that will lead to Bertuzzi getting a lot of easy, greasy, tap-in-like goals from the net front presence area. I thought it made a lot of sense. So to see him not earn a job along with Bedard on the top line following the preseason is pretty disappointing, but I do expect him to wind up there sometime sooner rather than later, and hopefully when he gets that opportunity, he winds up sticking there, because I think that's the ideal spot we all want Tyler Bertuzzi in. As far as where does he need to impact the game the most for the Blackhawks this year to make his presence felt, well, I do think it's key for him to make an impact offensively and be a little bit more of a dynamic Nick Foligno, if you will, from last year. I truly think it's the grit, physicality, and the edge that's needed the most out of Tyler Bertuzzi. And for those of you who have been listening or watching the show for a long time, then I've been preaching for some toughness and some size inside the Blackhawks top six. It's been something they've been missing for far too long now. And Tyler Bertuzzi is actually fits that mold. That was the one thing that I was happy to see in bringing in Tyler Bertuzzi, he was someone with some good size, can play with a little bit of speed, and has some character, has a little bit of flavor out there, not afraid to rub you into the boards, not afraid to mix it up. He's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife out there. That was the type of player that I think the Blackhawks were missing, and I think that's the exact type of job and presence that Tyler Bertuzzi needs to provide. So while the offense absolutely is key, and the Blackhawks need him to be a better offensive player than what they had last year, I think it's the grit, physicality, and the edge that needs to be prevalent the most out of Tyler Bertuzzi this year. And then looking at the numbers he put up last year to kind of give us an idea going into this season, 80 games, like I mentioned, with the Maple Leafs. I have the numbers backwards, 21 goals, 22 assists, not the other way around like I originally said it. Either way, though, still leads out to 43 points in 80 games worth of action. Chipped in for 5 power play goals, added 98 hits, shot 13.1%, and is a good double-digit shooter throughout the course of his career. As far as numbers that I expect for Tyler Bertuzzi this year on an 82-game pace, I do think he is going to be a good goal scorer for the Blackhawks. And I wouldn't be surprised if he wound up finishing second in goals behind Connor Bedard this year. I have him potting 25. I also have him chipping in for 28 assists. I think he's going to be a bigger playmaking help than he's been the last couple of years, but that's just because of the opportunity he's getting here in Chicago. That's never been a strength of his game. I don't think it's going to be a strength of his game here, but he's going to have enough around him in the opportunities that he gets to chip in for 28 assists, along with those 25 goals. That gives Tyler Bertuzzi 53 points in an 82-game pace, and I think that's very attainable for a player of his quality. 43 points last year for Toronto. Yes, that was a better offensive team. He's going to have a more sizable role for the Blackhawks this year and is going to be the net front presence guy on the power play. I would love to see Tyler Bertuzzi have 6 to 7 power play goals for this team this year. Time on ice, probably somewhere around 17 to 18 minutes. If he does secure a top line spot for the long term, then it could be, 19, 20 minutes per game, especially because of what he can do in the special teams department. And then as far as the shooting percentage, shooting the double digits, Tyler, it's something he's really done for the majority of his career. And if he shoots in the double digits for the Blackhawks this season, I do think he's easily going to wind up hitting 20 goals. So there is Tyler Bertuzzi's 2024-2025 season preview. That is going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks right now, wherever you may get your podcasts, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way, you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me on X at Jack Bushman2. Be sure to also check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until the next episode, everyone, which will be my recap episode following tonight's season opener against the Utah Hockey Club. Until then, everyone, go Hawks. Let's get a win tonight. God, it would be nice to start 1-0. Everyone, enjoy the game, and I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On podcast. Wrong button. I'm a fool. Your team every day. I'm such a mess.